Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after, well, let's call it what it was. It was a beatdown, ladies and gentlemen, by the Winnipeg Jets. An absolute thrashing of the New Jersey Devils. Now, many of you may remember back at the beginning of the season, Ken and I kind of doing a season preview, what we thought was going to happen. My preview out of the East was that it was, for me, between the Toronto Maple Leafs, if you remember, and the New Jersey Devils, for who was going to come out of the East. You know me. I don't recant on my picks. Once I've made my picks, I say, okay, there I am. That's what it is. Last year, if you remember, I picked the Edmonton Oilers, as I did again this year, to win the Stanley Cup. And, they came out of the gates the way they did. A lot of people thought they weren't going to make the playoffs. I did not recant on that. I said, once you go down that road, you can't turn around and do that. And then if you ever do, pull off the miracle, well, then your pick in the first place is absolutely meaningless. I'm ready to abandon that pick after watching the New Jersey Devils on this night. No sign of a team that I think has any kind of hope to pull off representing the East or going to the Stanley Cup. Boring Sean Monahan says, I think the Devils are going to fade right out of the playoffs, especially with Hughes done for the season. I don't necessarily agree with this, but that said, not an inspiring performance. But let's get to the Winnipeg Jets, because it's the second straight game that they've fairly dominated their opponents, and credit has to go where it's due. I've said this at times in the past, that sometimes covering a team like the Winnipeg Jets, it can almost get boring because it's a little bit like Groundhog Day, the same thing happening over and over and over again. And while I wouldn't say, every single Jets game is the same, this is one of those Jets games that we've seen before, and that you'll have watched Kenny and Renny episodes this season where we do a game, and I'm just going to kind of run through the same themes, because those themes are what make the Winnipeg Jets great. And sometimes when they trot out those themes over and over again, what it means is it's a consistent team. Good teams are consistent teams. They win certain ways. You'll always hear the line about, good teams find a way to win. I think for the most part, really good teams win because they're consistent and they do certain things well over and over and over and over again. It's like anything in life. If you want to make progress, you just got to do the right things over and over and over again, and they'll start to pay off. If you want to be a bodybuilder, what do? You eat your protein and you work out over and over and over again, and that's how you get there. There's no shortcuts. The Winnipeg Jets aren't a shortcut team. And so a couple of things, the two things that I think really won this game for the Winnipeg Jets on this night. Let's start with the first one. And it's that the Winnipeg Jets, I just think they want it more. They compete more. They would rather die than allowing a goal. And I just thought that there was a perfect summary in the beginning of that game with the sequence that leads to the Winnipeg Jets' first goal and a fourth line goal. We'll get to talking about Brandon Tanev. And of course, I should say this right off the bat. We are going to be talking about the trade deadline. A lot to be said about that. But right before that goal happens, the puck is down in the Winnipeg Jets and the puck gets past Connor Hellebuyck. It is sitting there. It is ready to tap into the net. This is the New Jersey Devils opening the scoring against the Winnipeg Jets. There is a player right there. The puck is right there. It's him in a wide open net that he couldn't possibly miss. This is them scoring. And then he gets hauled down by Dylan DeMelo in that situation. Now, if you take a look at it again, it's probably a missed penalty. I can tell you they weren't happy at the Prudential Center, or whatever they call this arena here. The replay shows he hooked the hands and hauled the player down. So was it a missed penalty? Probably. Ken and I were having a conversation, if in a situation like that, if they had called it a penalty, would it be like, a player on an empty net breakaway, where if you throw his stick or trip them or do something to keep them from scoring on the empty net, that the official can award the goal? I still don't know the answer to that question. I personally think. Ken doesn't. I think if the refs in that situation thought that a goal was stopped by a penalty, a sure goal, that would have been an option for the ref. Regardless, the point of this is whether it was a penalty or not, whether it was called or not, Dylan DeMelo would rather die than not do everything in his power in that situation to keep that puck from going into the back of the net. So he does. He battles. And it was a great line by Fred, the camera guy for TSN, who was sitting beside me during the game. He said, in those situations, stolen off the goal line, it's always Dylan DeMelo. And it is. It is always Dylan DeMelo. And I wonder where that shows up on the goals above expected and the goals below expected and whatever. Like, I've wondered how that's factored into his play, because the one thing that I've said is I don't know that I've seen a player, and I don't watch other teams the way that I watch the Winnipeg Jets. But to me, the amount of goals that Dylan DeMelo has stolen off the line is absolutely remarkable. And I just think that compete level that he shows, I think he's maybe the best player on the Winnipeg Jets at doing that. But I think that it's that kind of attitude that I never say die, that we will not stop fighting until that puck is in the back of the net. And we may even fight for a couple seconds after that, like those, football coaches in practices where if the ball is fumbled and you're not diving all over the ball, you're running laps or something like that, teaching you to go take the play further than necessary, not less further than necessary. But it's a way of me just getting to the performance of the Winnipeg Jets in that situation. There's no goal. There's no opening goal by the New Jersey Devils because the Winnipeg Jets battle level is ridiculously high, and they do not want to get scored on, and they're not going to get scored on if they can help it. And in that situation, they do it. Puck goes down to the other end of the ice, and sure enough, Iafallo gets to the puck first, beats his man to the net. Just another one of these things where the defender is not in the mindset of, I would rather die than let Alex Iafallo get to the front of the net. Alex Iafallo gets to a rebound. Pretty, tidy little goal. Throw it on net, get a rebound, pop the rebound in, boom, it's in the back of the net. Sounds simple. Well, it's simple when you don't have someone who would rather die than let you get to that spot, but that's what it is. The Winnipeg Jets don't allow a goal because they don't want to, and they don't want to allow you to score more than you want to score in that situation. And on the other side of the ice, the Winnipeg Jets want to score more than you don't want them to score. And that's why it's 1-0 in that situation. And then from then on, it's another theme that I've watched from this Winnipeg Jets team over and over and over and over again. But what I think makes the Winnipeg Jets great, we've said this before, it's the system that they play, it's the details, all those little kind of things. Details, I think, for the most part, are a way of saying if you pay attention to details, and it's a little bit more than this, but if you are a good attention to detail team, I don't think you're a very mistake-prone team. Right? Because you are focused on, in order for me to execute that play, the details of it are that I need to move fast enough to get into this body position, to box the guy out with my shoulder, and then carry the puck over here. Those are what details are. Details require effort. Details require constant attention. The Winnipeg Jets are so good at that. And in being good at that, what it does time and time and time again is it exposes opponents that do not have that same attention to detail or that same attention level or that compete level. And so what you saw in that game after that point is the Winnipeg Jets capitalizing on mistakes over and over and over again. Mistake number one. The goaltender comes out and plays the puck for the New Jersey Devils when his guy is back. He's got a man back to play the puck, and instead he runs out. I don't know if he's what Jacob Markstrom is doing there. I think there's no pass to a guy there's no urgency to try and hit a guy who's going to be on a breakaway, throws it into the Jets player, and it ends up resulting in a penalty. Hey, here's a good idea. Let's for no reason take a penalty against the very best power play in the NHL and see how that turns out. Well, it turns out with the Winnipeg Jets executing the way that they've been doing, we'll get into the power play, but you'll notice they just isolated that same opportunity over and over again for Nikolai Ehlers. Why? Because that's what was there, and the Winnipeg Jets found it. And then in the end, it's a pass off the pad, not an attempted shot to score. You may notice, okay, I'll get into it now. You may notice the shot by Nikolai Ehlers, the shot right before that is a shot on the short side, right? So you're almost expecting as a goaltender for that player to think, oh, I missed, but I bet you I could get it this time. So he's thinking it's going that way. It suddenly goes far side. And because you're not expecting it, you kick it straight out into the slot. Boom, it's in the back of the net. So that's brilliance on the part of Nikolai Ehlers, who I thought had an absolutely great game. But mistake number one, capitalized on it. Next, you get Nikolai Ehlers gets the puck again. He comes swinging around with speed. And the defenseman, you would never see a Winnipeg Jets defender not do this. You would stick with the man. It's a man-to-man system. You follow him, and the defenseman falls for what looks like the Winnipeg Jets defenseman throwing the puck into the corner. So he's going to go and try and cut it off. And what he does as he heads towards the corner, Nikolai Ehlers keeps skating up, and boom, there's your separation. There's the shot. It's in the back of the net. The Adam Lowry goal, I don't think I need to explain anyone the mistake that's made there by Simon Nemec in that situation. I will say this. I find this interesting. I like touching on other teams in the league, although I know some people want me to talk exclusively about the Winnipeg Jets. But Nemec was one of these young, high draft picks who'd been complaining and very vocal about not getting an opportunity in the NHL. He wanted to get that faster. He thought he was being held back. And he comes up and he pulls off plays like that. Kid, it's probably better if you let your play do the talking than going out and yapping about it and then going and pulling off plays like that. But the Winnipeg Jets right there, Johnny on the spot to put that in the back of the net. And then after that, you're just talking about Kyle Connor's speed opens up a play there. There's mistakes clearly made for that to happen, but this is just at that point, the Winnipeg Jets are rolling. The New Jersey Devils have no help. Another thing the Winnipeg Jets would never do. They would never wave the white flag. The New Jersey Devils waved the white flag in this game. 2 straight games that the Winnipeg Jets, through playing the game the right way, surviving, battling, taking pucks off the line. There's a save in there. I don't think it'll be the keg save of the game where Connor Hellebuyck is just lying out flat in the front of that. He's not even looking at where the shot comes from, but it hits him because at that point, he's just out of the play, but making himself as big and boring as possible. But it's just a situation of the Winnipeg Jets time and time again over the last 120 minutes of hockey, showing that they're a team that wants it at almost every point of the game, to the point that, and this is sports for the most part, ladies and gentlemen, you get 2 teams, 2 boxers, 2 basketball teams, 2 football teams, 2 highlight groups, 2 pickleball players. And I'm going to tell you this, whoever wants it more, eventually the vast majority of sports comes down to, I want it more than you. And eventually your opposition saying, you know what, just take it. Sometimes you get 2 warriors that will go at it and at it and at it and at it, and one will come out on top, and that's what you usually see in the playoffs. But even at the professional level, the vast majorities of athletic contests come down to one team saying, I want it, and the other team saying, you want it so bad, just take it. That's what we saw on this night. And that's what we see on so many nights, ladies and gentlemen, is the Winnipeg Jets being a team that wants it and doing the right, knowing the right things to do to get it, and consistently doing the right things to get it. And that's why they come out on top tonight in a very dominant fashion against a team that they looked like they broke. I'm actually, I know they've already lost 4 of their last 5 games. This to me has that feel of the Winnipeg Jets taking a team and kind of crushing their belief underfoot. I'm wondering how the New Jersey Devils are going to respond after getting turned over the knee of the Winnipeg Jets in this situation. That's my take on the whole thing. Time to bring in the man with the best music in the business to get his take on the whole thing. Here comes Kenny, folks. Ken Roymack has been around long enough. He should know better than this. He says Kenny has fallen asleep in the green room. This is never the case. Kenny is always ready and raring to go. And if you find it's 15 minutes into the show,
my watch is broken.
What you will find is Renny has been doing a great job of tap dancing until you get here. It's great to finally see you here looking like $1 million. Ken, I was telling the folks before you got here that I'm at the hotel and you're still at the game, not only because you're grinding away and one of the hardest working men in the business, but also because when I'm here, I can talk badly about you like I did last show and you don't hear it. So now it's between me and the audience, all the stuff I've been saying about you. I'm going to say a good 10 of the first 15 minutes has been me besmirching your honor. You're just going to have to go back and watch it later on to YouTube to get all of that, Ken. But it's great to see you here looking like $1 million as always. I pulled out another new one here on the trip from Vittorio Rossi. This is my wine colored burgundy. I don't know. Sometimes, anyways, I use this tie to kind of bring out that because I learned that kind of stuff. Oh, you want to bring out certain patterns, certain colors. That's what a tie is for at the high level. I used to just grab stuff and throw it on. And then Frankie and the boys took me and educated me, took me to another level. So if you're ready to level up, folks, you know what to do. Head on down to Corden Avenue, walk in to Vittorio Rossi, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you, and ask for Frankie and the boys. They will help you level up and take you to that new level all on their own. Ken, big whumping here tonight for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah. Impressive all around. I mean, it's funny. We talked about breaks sometimes going a team's way. Well, today, a break definitely went the Jets' way. They got away. I'm guessing you mentioned it already, but Dylan DeMelo definitely tackled Jesper Bratt with the puck behind Connor Hellebuck, and the Devils poised to get a 1-0 lead. And instead, the Jets go the other way. Their fourth line gets a big goal from Alex Iafallo. And yeah, I don't think that the Jets broke their spirit quite then, but I would say that late goal from Nikolai Ehlers certainly was a major, major factor in how this one went sideways for the New Jersey Devils, a depleted team that was playing without the equivalent. Again, I'm not saying equivalent of skill or whatever, but that's basically like taking, if you don't have Jack Hughes or Dougie Hamilton, that's like taking Mark Scheifele and Josh Morrissey out of the lineup, essentially in terms of a number one defenseman and number one centerman. Again, this isn't debate about who's better or whatever else. And as most people know, my feelings about Josh Morrissey's game and where he belongs in the Norris Trophy are abundantly clear and on display again this evening. So that's not what we're talking about here. What we saw from the Jets is that they were very impressive on a lot of fronts. They stifled their competition for the most part. Didn't give up a whole lot. Connor Hellebuck was very good when he had to be. You know, the only thing that beats him is a absolute beauty of a pass by Jonathan Kovacevic, who finds Dawson Mercer for a one-timer. That Connor again, we always hear from Eric Comrie and Connor Hellebuck himself that to say he had no chance on is people think that that's disrespectful to Connor Hellebuck because he almost has a chance to make every single save. But this one was going to be very tough for him to make just based on the really good pass and Mercer being open at a sharp angle. So, again, so what we talked about going into this road trip was the Jets offense was letting them down. In the first game against the Islanders, they generated plenty against Ilya Sorokin, but only managed to get 2 in a 3-2 loss. Since that time, Sean, all of a sudden it's a 10-2 cumulative score over the Philadelphia Flyers and New Jersey Devils. And hey, we get it. the Flyers are clinging to playoff life, and the Devils are trying to get past two massive losses in their lineup. And we'll see where things go from there. But yeah, I mean, full marks to the Jets. They took it to their opponent, and then once they kind of broke their spirit, they kind of piled on a little bit with a couple more late goals, including one from Cole Perfetti that got him to tie his career high. Kyle Connor gets to 80 points for the season, Sean, through 64 games. Pretty impressive. And also, what's the third one? Morrissey hit 50 points for a third consecutive season, Sean. So, I mean, a couple milestone things. I mean, Nikolai Ehlers flying in this one. Absolutely back-breaking goal. 29.1 seconds to go in that period, and that just sort of let the air out of the balloon, even though we know the Devils got one early in the third, tried to make it interesting in those first 6 minutes, and actually had chances, Sean, to get it to 3-2. But what they sort of reestablished their game and then kind of took it to their opponent. So, yeah, I mean, this has been a super busy day. It was an interesting one on a lot of fronts, and we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I mean, overall, Jets improving to what? That's 40. Sorry, I know this off the top of my head, but I'm blanking out. Another big win for the Jets. Consecutive wins just for the second time on back-to-back games in the back end. 2-5 on the season now, Sean. That's something they wanted to get better at, and this was a step forward in that front. And Connor Hellebuck, good when he had to be, not overworked or by any means. But Jets improved to 44-16-4, good for 92 points, 719 win percentage. That will now increase their lead to 8 points over the Stars, but the Stars now have 2 games in hand in the Central Division here. So that's where we're at for now.
All you can do is keep winning. It's actually an interesting scenario by which the Winnipeg Jets clearly control their destiny when it comes to finishing first in the Central Division, as do the Dallas Stars, right? There's 2 more games so far, and there's 2 games in hand. So if the Dallas Stars win their 2 games in hand, they're 4 points back. And then if they win their 2 games clean against the Winnipeg Jets, they're tied. And I think head-to-head, that means their series would be 3-1. Now, that's not easy to do, folks. So everything that I'm saying there, it's a long shot. The Winnipeg Jets are putting themselves in a good situation here. We want to get to talking about the trade deadline. We're going to, but the hint to that is clearly after what happened today with Colorado and Dallas, I think it is extremely important. You know how I've said all this about how the regular season really doesn't mean that much to me anymore, and the Winnipeg Jets, I think, have proved everything they need to in the regular season. It's about the postseason. It matters now. The Winnipeg Jets finishing first in the Central Division. I'm not even talking about the President's Trophy. And you know what? Anytime you can hang a banner in your rafters that is not a made-up banner, like what we saw from the Nashville Predators a number of years back, anytime you can hang a banner, that's important. So the President's Trophy is something that for sure the Winnipeg Jets as an organization would be able to hang and be proud about and keep in the rafters from now until the end of time. But I'll tell you this much, the real prize here is the Central Division, because avoiding one of the Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars is going to be extremely important. But before we get to that, Ken, let's talk about one of those trades that happened and had an effect on this game. We can talk about it right now. Just the return of Brandon Tanev. What did you see? What did you think?
Yeah, I saw a game that I'm quite familiar with, having seen Brandon play his first game with the Winnipeg Jets in 2016 when he signed after finishing his college career. It's a very energized type of player. One of the differences, wearing 73 instead of 13, which now belongs to Gabriel Velarde. 15 shifts for 11:28 of ice time. Chipped in 1:10 on the penalty kill and was very disruptive in that situation, Sean. 1 shot attempt, 2 hits, 1 block shot. Sort of what you see is what you get. And to me, Brandon Tanev is a guy who is very energized. I love the way that he plays. He's a guy who is around the puck a lot. He has some offensive upside too. He's got 9 goals this year, 17 points now in 61 games. He's a guy that can, he obviously started on the 4th line here. He's a guy that if you need him to, you could play him on the 3rd line. But right now he's a veteran presence. He knows where to be. And the fact of the matter, Scott O'Neill pointing out that here's a guy, Sean, we saw him roll in. It was around 5:15, wasn't it? Wasn't it around 5:15 for a 7:07 start? Got himself in the video room, was reminded of a few things about systems play, and went out there.
It wasn't 5:15; it was closer to 5:45.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Sorry. I mean, it definitely was.
I mean, it's only a half hour.
Either way, but
a half hour counts when you're like just walking onto a new team.
When you're rolling in from Philadelphia. I mean, for folks who don't know, the Kraken were in Philadelphia. So, Brandon even said after the game, he was staying at the same hotel as the Jets brass. So he went in and said hello to Kevin Cheveldayoff and a few people like Craig Heisinger and Larry Simmons and some of the scouts, and made his way down, the turnpike like we did, and made his way to Newark. So rolled in, got his equipment out of the bag, and took on the next challenge. But you could tell he was super excited about it, Sean. Brandon's pretty short. For his words per minute are not nearly as fast as his legs are, or as plentiful, if you will. But he's a guy that gives you everything he has. We heard the way that both Adam Lowry and Josh Morrissey spoke about him. He's going to fit in very easily with this group, and he can play a lot of roles. And we saw it here too. He got involved physically and was ready to throw down if the New Jersey Devils player Paul Cotter was willing, and they never found each other. But I think this is a smart addition. And again, no offense to Yoel Armia. He was a good player for the Winnipeg Jets, but to me, Brandon Tanev is a lot more of a feisty player than Armia. So to me, you and I talked about this. Tanev was always going to be a better fit just because I think he's probably got a little bit more speed and just the physical nature that he plays with. He's involved all the time, kind of dog on the bone type of player. Like I said, can kick in a little bit of offense in the complementary fashion, but I think this was a smart addition, a low risk addition. Hey, I get it. Second round pick. Some people will see that's a high price, but Sean, guess what? Prices are high at this time of year, and we're going to go way deeper into prices on a number of other items as we move along here. But I like the addition of Brandon Tanev. He fit right in, and I think he's a guy that as the games get more difficult, he will have a bigger impact, is how I would describe it.
Well, one thing, I forgot how fast he was.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you saw him out there, and it's interesting. The Winnipeg Jets are a fast team, and Rasmus Kupari, I think, has the second highest clocked speed on ice so far this season. So, we probably didn't see Brandon Tanev achieve speeds tonight that we've seen Rasmus Kupari achieve throughout the year. But that said, I mean, man, oh man, he just seems to have that high-end level of speed at all times, brought it. The one thing is, and if anyone was watching the coverage on Sportsnet today, I went on a couple times and I'd said what the Winnipeg Jets, and I think what Kevin Cheveldayoff is really good at doing, and I've said this before, his strength is knowing a team's identity and finding players that fit that identity. So someone had said here that they thought that it was a real good fit for Brandon Tanev. You knew it was going to be. And to be honest, before they even picked up Brandon Tanev, you knew that the player that they were going to pick up, or players that they were going to pick up, were going to fit really well into this system, because the Jets know who they are as the team. They know that it's their identity. And so Brandon Tanev, when it was announced that he was coming, I kind of feel like Brandon Tanev was part of the genesis of the Winnipeg Jets understanding that style of hockey is something really good for them. Then he left, but I mean, you talk about that, line that they had years ago of Andrew Kopp, Adam Lowry, and Brandon Tanev. That was such a good line for the Winnipeg Jets. And I kind of think that stuck in the Jets' brains after all those years, having those dogged players like that. What they've done is they've just taught since he left and came back. Here will be the interesting thing to talk to about him, Ken, and maybe talk to him off to the side. But when he left, it was a team that had that line that played like that. And then, in the words of Renny, two lines of kind of snake charmers above him, right? So they would go out and they would grind, and then the other guys would go out and they'd pull out the old, I don't even know what you call that thing the snake charmers play. But it would be interesting to get his take now on playing on this team and how has he seen the progress in Mark Scheifele's game in the way that he's become part of this team that grinds, or Kyle Connor or Nick Ehlers and so on and so forth, who have kind of come onto the side of Adam Lowry like that. But regardless, you touched on it. Looked like he was ready to throw it down. We got to see the Brandon Tanev crazy eyes on one of the exchanges that he had there with the player. This, I think, is important. I asked Kevin Cheveldayoff about it. The last game, if anyone knows, I don't know if we talked about it on the show afterwards, it seemed like Philly was really throwing the body in that game quite a bit. And I had turned to you and I said, so what do the Jets do now in this situation? Does Adam Lowry have to go out and cool the temperature down? Now, everyone knows me. Everyone knows I'm a fan of this kind of hockey, and I'm a fan of the way Adam Lowry plays it. But you can't, as a team, be looking to your daddy night after night after night and saying, could you head out there and cool things down for us? There has to be more people willing to do it. On this night, it didn't take getting into a fight. It doesn't always. It just kind of takes some standing up and a little bit of sandpaper and a little bit of staring your opponent down, sometimes with crazy eyes, like we saw from Brandon Tanev tonight, and just saying, like, we're not going down that road, or if we are, I'm willing to go down that road. So adding him and adding Luke Schenn, I thought was really important. Schenn not even in the lineup, but I thought there was some hits starting to be thrown around tonight, and then I thought slowly as the game wore on, the Winnipeg Jets were more taking advantage of that situation. But Brandon Tanev, a welcome guy to have back, who fits on that third line if that's where they want to go, who fits on that fourth line if they want to go. And I do think we heard this, and he touched on it. It was said to us by Scott Arniel earlier on with the Parker Ford injury, Nikita Chibrikov injuries. He said, our depth has taken a hit. We need more depth. They get more depth with him. A guy like the Gus Bus is probably going to be playing a little bit less now. We'll see. Probably Rasmus Kupari plays a little bit less now, but those guys, when they plug them into the lineup, they do really well. Really a fit. You knew it was going to be a fit. It showed tonight why it was a fit. The fourth line worked well with him out there. A pickup that I think the fans love when it comes to Brandon Tanev. And I think, more importantly, it's a pickup the players love.
Yeah, no doubt. And before we move on to the other trade, I just think it's important to quickly mention, really like the way that Morgan Barron looked at center, Sean. It's just a little different dynamic to that fourth line. Again, I appreciate the way that David Gustafsson plays, have for a very long time. But I'm curious to see more of Morgan Barron down the middle here. Again, is this going to be the long-term solution? I'm not sure, but I think it's worth taking a little bit more of a look at. Rasmus Kupari's had a very good year. He's in concussion protocol for those who might have missed it the last night when we mentioned. But I like the way that he looked at center. We've talked about his power forward game, Sean, and I thought that line was, they brought a physical element. They get to the net, and I thought they were really effective in their first game. What did you think of Tanev down the middle?
I kind of liked everything that line did. They brought the energy. I don't know that I would get overly, and you'll hear. I honestly think for the most part at the NHL level and the way that the Winnipeg Jets play their system, when they think about, the person playing in the middle, for the most part, I think that they're fully just thinking of like draws and things like that right off the bat, right? Like there was a
5-4 in the circle.
Yeah. But there was a penalty kill earlier on in the game that Mark Scheifele, so I think it was their first penalty kill of the game, and Mark Scheifele was out there and took the face off, and I turned to my camera guy and I said, well, that's odd, unless because I believe it was Adam Lowry. Yeah, it was Adam Lowry who was in the box. I thought, well, maybe he's the guy they want out on the face off. Sure enough, he goes out, takes the face off, and gets off the ice right away. But if you think, and I think that top line is the perfect example of it when it comes to this team and how they operate in the offensive zone, Mark Scheifele is everywhere on the ice, on the boards, in behind the net, in the slot, working everywhere. So is Gabe Vilardi. So is Kyle Connor. They're really kind of move all over the place. So I'm really not overly worried other than how they figure out who's going to take draws and how that's going to work. I think the Winnipeg Jets, for the most part, are a team that can head out and play every position on the ice. A guy like Alex Iafallo is smart enough to do that. Morgan Barron is showing he can do that. And we've seen in the first game that Brandon Tanev comes back. He shows that he can do that. So the Winnipeg Jets have all kinds of options, all kinds of depth. Everyone kind of works to that end. And once again, you knew that this was going to work with Brandon Tanev because, as I've said before, I think kind of Brandon Tanev was the genesis of the Winnipeg Jets. He and Adam Lowry and how they worked off each other was the genesis of the Winnipeg Jets kind of heading in this direction in the first place. You want to get to, I mean, we might as well go trade stuff. The Jets kicked some butt in this game. Adam Lowry, I thought, was great. The power play continues to be hot. They continue to do a good job of isolating the weakness. They did that tonight. I kind of explained how that went. I don't think we need to go too much deeper into that. No. Josh Morrissey was absolutely phenomenal, continues to be phenomenal. It's one of these things, Ken, where I said it's almost, I don't want to say boring, but when you have a team that is as consistent as this, how do you come in every night and say, hey, you know who had a good game tonight? Josh Morrissey, because Josh Morrissey has a good game every night. I just thought he was absolutely fantastic out there in doing his thing. I thought that the second line played really well out there. Nikolai Ehlers was absolutely phenomenal and flying. The one thing I will say, and we'll get into that, you can see when he gets out there for moments with certain players like he did, it doesn't take long for him to do something and put the puck in the back of the net when he gets out there with Mark Scheifele and Gabe Vilardi. A lot of his offense still seems to come when he is not necessarily on that second line, something that we're going to have to talk about at this stage here. Third line, I thought, continued doing what they've been doing and kind of leaning on teams. You kind of got a character performance from each and every one of those lines on this night here. So let's move past that game and get to the rest of, because there's more to talk about when it comes to trade deadline outside of just Winnipeg. But Luke Schenn, in my mind, Ken, I don't think I need to say much more, is exactly what the Winnipeg Jets we knew were looking for, exactly what they needed. You pointed him out as a guy who the Winnipeg Jets would be going after. You and I drove from Philly to New Jersey last night, and we were scratching our heads about the Pittsburgh Penguins picking up Schenn, and then we kind of said, like, unless they're just middlemaning this thing, right? Using Schenn to move a contract in Michael Bunting, which basically Kyle Dubas came out and said today. They've basically been in the process of shedding salary, and now so that's what they did. They used that as a situation to shed salary, move a player to Nashville, and then turn around and then move that player as they did to the Winnipeg Jets in order to get a couple of draft picks in the process. But Ken, I'll say the wide open, maybe obvious comment. This is exactly what the Winnipeg Jets needed. This is exactly what we knew they were going to target. Why did they target him, Ken? What is he specifically going to bring to this team?
Yeah, it fits all of the boxes that we had discussed when talking about Rasmus Ristolainen, guys like that we were discussing in the weeks leading up. We've also talked about Luke Schenn before he was moved to the Pittsburgh Penguins. We listened to how Adam Lowry talked about him. Like, just try to get to or Josh Morrissey said, it's not very fun trying to get to the net when Luke Schenn is standing there and he leans on you in the corner. He's a shot blocker, really physical force. And as I think it was Josh said it too, underrated puck mover for a big man. He's a guy who's totally reinvented himself, Sean. For folks who don't know, Luke Schenn was buried in the minors, and some people were wondering how much more of a career he would have if he would even get back to the NHL. He sort of reinvented his game. Part of that was working with Adam Oates, and he became a force, and he just eclipsed 1,000 games. This is an absolute high character, loves to play at the guts of and defend the guts of the ice, Sean. He's incredible at box outs. He makes life miserable for you in front of the net, and he has championship pedigree from his time with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Sean, he's the only guy on the roster with the ring, and that's an important thing when it comes to playoff time. I think this is a great move, and Sean, he fits the model of what we've talked about. Jets were interested in him previously when he went to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then when he signed with the Nashville Predators. He's from Saskatoon. He is a prairie guy, and he's going to fit perfectly. He is going to be a guy that absolutely works perfectly with where the Jets are at. I think he helps the third pairing. I actually, like I've said this all along, I think Colin Miller's had a very solid year when playing, but I think that Luke Schenn brings a little bit more of a physical element, or substantially more physical element, even though Colin Miller plays hard. He's just such a heavy player to play against, and I think he's someone that can really have an impact on the Winnipeg Jets. And like we said, he fits the guy they were interested in before, and it's no surprise they were interested in him again. He is 35 years old. He has one more year left on his deal. This isn't necessarily just a Band-Aid solution. He can give the Jets, another year of service at a time when the Jets are in their competitive window. I think it's a super smart addition. Price tag, people can say what they want, second and a fourth. I mean, that's, again, cost of doing business. And this is not just a third pairing guy that's a hanger on in the league. He can give you 15, 16 minutes. If you need him to play 18, he can do that also. If you need him to protect the lead, put him over the ice. He does the job. I think this is a smart addition by the Winnipeg Jets, and it's something that they needed to do to their back end. We know, Sean, they were trying to get a second line center. We'll dig into that a little bit further. There was even some talk that they might be looking at a left shot D for the third pairing to play with Luke Schenn. So, that's neither here nor there. It didn't happen, but I think the Jets were very smart to add a guy like Luke Schenn. I know some folks in the analytics community are down on Luke Schenn. The other thing, too, we talked about penalty kill, Sean. Penalty kill needs to be better. Brandon Tanev immediately makes the penalty kill better. Luke Schenn plays on a team that has the best penalty kill in the NHL, or did, with the Nashville Predators, and he was a humongous part of that. So we talked about identifying needs. The Jets identified 2 of their 3 needs, as far as I'm concerned, but we'll dig into the rest of that in a minute.
Ken, can we not? I mean, I'll say this without Ken. It's an interesting one though. Maybe I'll wait for him. And this is about the idea of, the analytics community and how they would put down on a guy like Luke Schenn. Ken, now that you're back, oh no, he's not back. Now that you're back, Ken, if you can hear me, and you had said that about the analytics community and what they would say about Luke Schenn. We've heard this before. We heard it with Nikita Zadorov. We heard it with Tyler Myers. We hear these kind of things all the time. Rasmus Ristolainen is another player that's kind of beat down on. We'd heard this about Robert Bortuzzo in years past. We heard this about a whole bunch of the Montreal Canadiens defensemen the year that they went to the Stanley Cup. Has the hockey world not buried the kind of poo-pooing of certain members of the analytics community who, like, I still remember this to this day, and I've never heard someone from the analytics community who very loudly joined in on mocking the Montreal Canadiens when they traded PK Subban for Shea Weber, and what a joke it was, and how badly the Montreal Canadiens had been fleeced. And you just hear this all the time. Every time Nikita Zadorov went somewhere, there was people chortling from the side of their mouth and talking about this. And like, you take a look, that Tyler Myers and Nikita Zadorov, when the Vancouver Canucks almost knocked off the Edmonton Oilers to go to the third round last year, and who knows, maybe would have gone to the Cup final, were the key defensemen on that team last year, not Quinn Hughes, who a lot of people would think is the best. Like, have we not moved past this chortling and mocking of like these big quality, tough playing defensemen whose analytics may not look good, but at the time, or maybe is there at least an admission in the analytics community that something about the numbers they're looking at do not necessarily line up with the reality of how impactful those players are at the most important time of the year?
Yeah, and here's the other thing. I mean, the Predators had a tough year in terms of defending. Luke Schenn is a guy who has 64.3% of his own starts are in the defensive zone. So is it a surprise that, maybe his Corsi is not as high as you might like it to be? I mean, fine. But this is a guy that he fills a very important need for the Winnipeg Jets. Their back end needed to become tougher to play against. And Luke Schenn's one of the tougher guys to play against in the league when it comes to his skill set. So this is very simple to me. And Sean, we've talked about it a lot, and maybe not as much as we should have. The Jets defense core, when the Jets went on their long playoff run in 2018, was filled with big defensemen who play a physical game. Yes, Toby Enstrom was part of it. And Josh Morrissey was breaking into the league, but he plays very hard. This team needed to add up and shore up with a little bit of size. And I understand there's still going to be some people that say, have 6 puck movers that, if they're undersized, no big deal. That's fine. You can say whatever you want. And there are some years when some undersized defense cores do have success in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But the Jets needed to add some stiffness. Scott O'Neill used the word stiffness to their game, and that's something that both Tanev in his own way up front and Luke Schenn bring. And that's why I think it's an important deal. I'm not just saying that because, well, hey, the Jets did something, so they should be celebrated. They attacked 2 needs. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, some people don't like that the swings weren't quite as big as some other teams took, but hey, that's fine. We'll see in a couple of months if that's a big swing and a miss or not for the Winnipeg Jets. But what was not a swing and a miss was making their team better. The Jets are a better team today than they were yesterday. Are they going to be good enough to get to the top of the mountain and win 16 games? That's obviously up for debate, and that's up for them to show. Otherwise, we're going to have questions about maybe the deal that fell through or what the Jets didn't do at second line center.
All right, Ken, I got a bunch of things to talk about here. First off, after all these years, I finally found someone to apologize on the whole for the analytics community's take and the mocking of Shea Weber when that PK Subban trade went down. It's Frosty Winnipeg, of all people, who says, I'll admit it, I was wrong about the PK trade, which means, Frosty, thank you for doing this. I've been waiting for this. Someone needed to do it. But in doing so, you are retroactively taking the hot take award. That's what's happening in this situation here. You got to take the hot take award because that was a hot take back in those days, whether people knew it or not. And Frosty, I very much admire you for standing up and having the broad shoulders to take on the retroactive hot take for the entire analytics community who mocked that trade when it happened.
That's accountability right there.
Good for you. That's accountability. This guy could play for the Winnipeg Jets right now because he's accountable. And hey, Frosty, that's your K&R hot take. Brought to you by Flame and Comfort, Manitoba's premier supplier of fireplaces, wood stoves, inserts, and everything related to the hearth. After 50 years heating up your world, Flame and Comfort is soon moving. You'll find it will be one of the most impressive showrooms in Canada, in Western Canada. You don't need your hot takes to keep you warm or keep that warm feeling inside. All you got to do is visit Flame and Comfort. And Ken, I'm going to say this. I think you talked about Luke Schenn. I think he's the Pristine Roofing Wake Up Award guy, or time to hand out that, because I think he's going to be giving a lot of people the Pristine Roofing Wake Up call if they try and take liberties with the Winnipeg Jets, thinking that there's only Adam Lowry to have to worry about. He's a guy who seems to relish in doing those kind of things. So that means, of course, it is time to give North End Rick, who's in the chat room right now, taking shots at Renny for putting his glasses on. So wake him up, folks. I guess he's already awake anyways, although his takes could use some waking up. North End Rick at 204-981-6289. He's the guy to get down to your place for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. You can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 204-237-7663. If your home is looking a little dilapidated or just a little bit off, you know what? Give it the Pristine Roofing wake-up call. That would be a good idea. And I will say this, Ken, it has already clearly paid off for the Winnipeg Jets in bringing back Brandon Tanev. I know a friend of mine, his wife is the biggest Brandon Tanev fan out there. I don't know if that makes him happy that he's back, or if maybe he's a little bit jealous that he's back. One way or another, it's paid off for that sweet lady, that Brandon Tanev is back. And, of course, if you're looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt free faster. And you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online. Okay, Ken, we got to get to the other need of the Winnipeg Jets, which you and I were kind of debating. So Ken believes that their biggest need was on D on the back end, and that they filled that with Luke Schenn. I think that was clearly a big need. I think Luke Schenn satisfies that entirely. I still personally think that their biggest need was at 2C. They go shopping, and they had some bargains. They went to the market, right? They had some conversations with the people behind the scenes. Maybe they brought some money out and flashed it in the air. In the end, they do not come away with a 2C. Ken, is this a problem?
Well, it's only a problem if the Jets' second line goes quiet when the chips are down. They're playing good hockey right now. They've been very effective on a number of fronts. Cole Perfetti was on the board today. But they're, again, could it become a problem in a four series grind? Of course it could. But the Jets have depth throughout their lineup, and if their high end guys and their support group is able to produce the way that they have, Sean, they're one of the high. They're right now second in goals to the Washington Capitals. They're third right now in goals per game. So hey, could you always augment your offense by adding high end players? Of course they should. So I'm not saying that the Jets shouldn't have got a second line center today. And yes, we know there aren't participation medals. This is what I wrote there's no participation ribbons for finishing second place. Sean, I love the Toronto Blue Jays. They had a lot of runner-up finishes when it came to free agents. This is not free agency. It's trade deadline. I get it. Do I think the Jets would have been a better team or a better cup contender if they got Brock Nelson and they were able to move Vladislav Nemestikov, who's been very solid this year, down in the lineup to play an important role but play fewer minutes? Of course I do. But what we know, Sean, and part of it we had to decipher a little bit from what Kevin Cheveldayoff was saying, and he didn't want to get into specifics and he didn't want to make it sound like he was complaining about something. But Sean had done a little more digging, and I have been able to confirm Brock Nelson was he refused to waive his no trade clause. Now that's not to say that the Islanders preferred the Jets package to the Avalanche. That we're not saying, but it sounds like Brock was not willing to come to Canada, and specifically Winnipeg was on one of those teams that he was not willing to go to. So Kevin Cheveldayoff was adamant the Jets were not worried about price. They knew what the prices were. They were willing to pay a high price, and it sounds like Nelson was not interested in coming to Winnipeg at this time. The other one that I think is interesting, and again, you had to sort of read between the lines here, and part of that is the way that things are set up. Sean, we know this. Elliot Friedman, our good friend Elliot, reported that multiple teams wanted to have Luke and Brayden Schenn come to the same place. And so when Kevin Cheveldayoff said that this was a strange deadline, some players were available and then they weren't available. Sean, what do we know about the St. Louis Blues? They made it known that they were having a sale, and then they went out and had wins in 8 of 10 games. So yeah, we know that Kevin Cheveldayoff said he was willing to pay the price. Brayden Schenn would make sense that Brayden Schenn was one of those people the Jets were trying to get in on. But to me, I think that Doug Armstrong pulled him off the market. I think that this was kind of like a cage rattling situation for the Blues. Doug's done it before. He's offered up a lot of people before, including in 2019 when they went on the magic carpet ride that led to a Stanley Cup win. So, again, and there was lots of debate over whether adding Brayden Schenn at this time made sense given the 6.5 for 3 more years after this one that remain on his contract. But he would definitely have brought an element that the Jets don't have in abundance among their forward group. So to me, it sounds like they were in on both Nelson and Schenn. And again, that's an important thing to be in on, but ultimately you want to close those deals. But Sean, same way you and I didn't really find another solution. I mean, Jared McCann is someone that we talked about, and I think the Jets, from some of the sniffing around we've been doing, I know the Jets were talking to Seattle. I don't think it was just about Brandon Tanev. I think they probably expressed some interest in Jared McCann. Maybe the price tag didn't fit or whatever it is. But, other than that, I don't have a lot of great answers in terms of where the Jets could have gone in terms of filling that second line center role. And we already know Ryan O'Reilly was someone that we talked about, but he wasn't available as far as we know.
Yeah. Hey, it's been called for. It's been a while since I did this. It is what broke the 3-game losing streak, if anyone is interested. Someone thought I was ridiculous for wearing the headband during a loss, and instead they've won these 2 games in dominant fashion since. So, hey, I'm not afraid to do it, and I'll do it again. It's been called for. Let's make this a Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show. There's always different ways to look at a situation, Ken. And one way you can look at this situation for the Winnipeg Jets is that Kevin Cheveldayoff's got a job to do. And if you want to look specifically at the results, I think that he did not get the job done when it comes to that 2C role. We know that they were in on Brock Nelson, so we know that they thought that they needed to improve that position. They wouldn't be doing it otherwise. So we know that the Winnipeg Jets as an organization went out looking for and shopping for a 2C, and they never did get that 2C. Okay. So it is fair criticism for anyone out there. And there's plenty of people in the chat room to go and say, Kevin Cheveldayoff, this is your job. It's your job to go get a job done. You should have gone and got the job done. It's fair to have that opinion. It is also fair to look at this situation and question why that didn't happen. If you just want to be mad about this and, scream and pound the wall and scream shake your fists at the clouds in the air, you can do that. This is a scenario in which, as Ken is talking about, the Jets tried to go out, and I personally think that the Brock Nelson trade, had they been able to bring him in, would have taken and made this team near impenetrable. Okay, because you've got a great first line. We saw what Brock Nelson can do when the Winnipeg Jets played the New York Islanders just a couple of games ago. The way that he can possess, the way that he can control, he was exactly what the Winnipeg Jets needed. And what there should now, if this was a scenario where we were hearing behind the scenes that Kevin Cheveldayoff took a look at this and said, I'm not really liking the prices. The prices are too high. Then there should be an admonishment right now, because I've said this before. When it comes to those prices, the price is the price. If that's the market, you either buy a house or you don't. If you need a house and you need a place to live right now, and you're like, yeah, I don't like the market right now, and you go live on the street, or you go rent an apartment, or you go buy a cruddy house and things don't work out for you in that situation, that's kind of what you deserve, right? But in this situation, Kevin Cheveldayoff, who I thought, Ken, was as revealing as we've ever seen him before at these trade lines, made a couple things pretty evident to me that they tried to get Brock Nelson, and that deal was not there to be done. Not that they didn't try to make that deal, that in the end, well, no matter what they did, that deal was not going to happen. And then the other thing that he said today was that prices, and he said it was expensive out there. You saw the deals, but prices were not the factor in them not doing deals today. And so here, I want to explain what that looks like, because Scott Laughton was someone you'd heard about coming to the Winnipeg Jets. And I'll tell you this right now, if you were going out to get Scott Laughton, who's probably primarily, or his prime spot on a competitive team would be the third line center. If you're going out to get him to be your second line center, I ask you this, it was going to take a first round pick and a prospect in order to bring him in. And you would have brought in a player to be your 2C who has, I think, 3 points less than Vladislav Namestnikov so far this year. Now, you could debate which of those two is the better player. And someone out there who would want to specifically say, listen, I don't care what his numbers are. I think personally that Scott Laughton is a better second line center than Vladislav Namestnikov is. And you may have a bunch of numbers or opinions that would suggest he will make Nikolai Ehlers come alive and Cole Perfetti come alive and all these kind of things. I've got all the time in the world. But what I will say is, when you're looking at replacing wins above replacement, goals above replacement, all those kind of things, you have to wonder, is spending a first and a prospect to go get Scott Laughton getting you what does it solve the problem you're trying to solve? Does it make you impenetrable? Are you that much better with that player than with the other one? Now, if there was a whole bunch of other players out there, a whole bunch of other 2C options that went and moved to teams, we could have that. But Ken, you and I racked our brains when we were driving home last night, driving from Philadelphia to New Jersey. We racked our brains about, well, where are the Jets going to go now that Brock Nelson is gone? And there weren't a lot of places to go. I think, if there was a price to be paid to get Ryan O'Reilly, that was the guy for me. that if I were the Jets, I would have overpaid to get that guy and bring him in because I think he brings you that competitive nature. He's a great guy, great in the room, has won it before. I still think I'm impressed by him. I know a lot of people don't think he's what he was. I still think in the Jets system, he would have shone. But I am going to say that I've seen enough from this trade deadline. I've heard enough, and the fact that he didn't end up going anywhere else. I was told that the Toronto Maple Leafs checked in on him and were trying to get him back there, and he did not want to go back to Toronto. If you remember, they picked him up a couple of years ago at the trade deadline. So I don't think he was moving, and it was up to him whether he was going to move or not. So I would have been the first one here to have said, if Kevin Cheveldayoff wasn't meeting the prices of the market, shame on him. Shame on him not giving Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck the best possible shot and turning over every rock and bringing in every possible player to make this team better towards winning a cup. If I would have thought that that was the case. But honestly, Ken, when I see what Kevin Cheveldayoff tells us about why he didn't make moves, and when you see the way that the rest of the market shook down, it sure looks like the market was the market this year, and the play for them was Brock Nelson, and that they were ready to pay the price, and the player just wasn't ready to come. And so I think, though, I do think that Kevin Cheveldayoff took the best shot he had, solved the problems that he was able to solve. Just that 2C role continues to be the haunted house of the Winnipeg Jets lineup and position in that lineup, and that they just have not been able to solve that entirely 100%. I think it's important, Ken, because I think given what we've seen in the past, when you're not impenetrable, that's a spot in the lineup that other teams can look and say, we think we can exploit that. Did Nemeskov get a point tonight, Ken? I don't think he did.
I'll double check here.
I don't think he did. If he didn't, that's 7 straight games without a point. Now for Vladislav Nemeskov,
it's been a little streaky.
You don't want your 2C at this time of year going 7 games, almost a tenth of a season without scoring a point. This could be a problem. There's going to be a lot placed on Mark Scheifele in that top line to score. For the most part, the third line and the fourth line, even though they scored tonight, are typically zero-sum lines. They can go out and they can grind you and they can wear you down, and that's their job. And maybe they're going to kick in a goal here or there, but you can't rely on them typically for offense, although I do admit Adam Lowry has been one of the show-up players in the playoffs for a long time for the Winnipeg Jets. But right now, I think this puts a lot of pressure on Josh Morrissey and Neil Pionk to produce from the back end. I think it puts a lot of pressure on the top line to score, because I got to say, the way it's constructed right now, if I'm saying Nick Ehlers, Cole Perfetti, and Nemesnikov are going to find their groove in the playoffs and just sail through the playoffs and be that line that provides the secondary scoring that the Winnipeg Jets need, or that they could just go to sleep and be a problem and not be able to produce in the playoffs, I personally think it's more likely to be the second option rather than the first, Ken.
Well, I mean, we have recent evidence. I mean, Sean Monahan, for people who, again, one of the takes that was very ice cold this last stretch was that Sean Monahan was a poor addition for the Jets. Those people forgot what February, March, and the first 2 weeks of April looked like. Sean Monahan was a great fit for the Jets. He didn't have a good playoff. He had no points in the playoffs. I get it. He got a little bit snake bitten in that series. And Sean Monahan got outplayed by the Casey Middlestad line, Sean. They weren't always head-to-head with one another, but that line took it to the Jets and they had no answer. So if that happens again, that makes them vulnerable. That's 100% right by you. So it's up to those guys to continue to produce. In a game where Nemesnikov was held off the board, Perfetti scored, Ehlers had 3 points. Though, again, it is worth noting one of Ehlers' assists was on the power play on Josh Morrissey's 10th. And his goal came at the end of the period when he was out there with Velarde and Scheifele. So, but again, it's still offense produced, but it's not only offense produced with that line. There's pressure on that line for sure, Sean. I agree 100%. But the Jets are thinking about how their 4-line unit can still perform at a high level. And again, could they use more offense? Absolutely. They're also, let's keep it in perspective, they're the second highest team in the league in goals and third highest in goals per game. So it's not like the Jets are relying on winning games 2-1 and that they can't score. But there's still an area that they would be looking to, shore up. And let's just quickly touch on Cousins, just because you and I talked about it. Yeah. Dylan Cousins is a guy that I think would have made a lot of sense, but the Buffalo Sabres were looking for a centerman, and the Jets didn't have a centerman.
It's not there. That trade was never there. I've been saying that and this is Liquor Beaver says this the same thing about Josh Norris. Like, imagine getting Norris. They got Cousins in return. Jets could have easily made a play for Norris. No, they couldn't have easily made a play. The Ottawa Senators are trying to win or trying to get into the playoffs right now. So the Jets do not have now players to send to other teams. They've got futures. That's what they're trying to do. The Jets are trying to add and bring in. They're not trying to say, here, take Nick Ehlers, and we hope we get Nick Ehlers back. And it's a zero-sum game. So this is the thing that people, when we talked about this a number of times on the show, it was the same thing with Cousins. People kept telling me, they're going to get Cousins. Just go and offer this guy and this guy and this guy. No, both the Ottawa Senators and the Buffalo Sabres could not go to their fan bases and say, look, we got worse for right now, but we got some prospects that we really think you're going to be excited about 3 or 4 years from now. That's not how it works. There were too many teams this year. And this is why Kevin this is another reason why when I look at the market, I believe Kevin Cheveldayoff in what he was saying about not having the ability for that, because this is just this strange year where like over 66% of the league feels like they've got a shot at making the playoffs. So they're not looking, they don't want to imagine you. Think about this. You remember what it was like to be a Winnipeg Jets team that was striving to make the playoffs. Imagine you were finally there and you were ready to make the playoffs and you were excited and looking forward to playoff hockey. And then at the trade deadline, your team went out and your GM went out and gutted your team and sent someone away. That's the kind of thing that makes you want to give up your season tickets. That's the kind of thing that pisses off your fan base. So everybody thinks that this is easy. This guy's available. Just go get that guy. Man, Chevy screwed up by not getting that guy. I've been saying this since the beginning, and there's a whole bunch of you who've been messaging me about this for a long time, about Cousins and all of this. The Jets were never an option to go after that player. They did not have the players to pull that off. And a lot of you say to me, Nick Ehlers, throw Nick Ehlers in there. Great. Let's take a young guy whose best year already as a young guy is the second best year Nick Ehlers ever had. He's this many years younger. He's bigger. He plays a more brute style game. He's under contract for longer. And let's trade him for a guy who's about to expire and leave somewhere else. Like, this game is harder. This GM game is harder to play than most people think. And when you suggest people like that, that just proves it. Those are players the Jets never had a chance on. So if you're upset with Chevy right now, don't be upset because you thought that he swung and missed on Cousins or Norris. Those were not the kind of players they could get in that situation. Ken, we should touch on, and I know it's late here. First off, I want to say, in fairness, there's maybe one person who could have pulled off a trade to get a guy like Dylan Cousins in, and that would be Sweet Lou Ferlin, because he can just kind of pull off everything. I'd like you to give him a shout out there, Ken.
You bet. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, contact Lou Ferlin at Rolla Page Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of our community, including this podcast.
Love it. With Stu Smith helping me hammer out my point here. Anyway, Ken, we should touch on, I think you want to do, Ken and I are going to do a league wraparound on what we saw from around the league, the winners and losers here. Because there was a lot of action today. To me, this, Ken, is actually maybe the most interesting trade deadline that I've seen in my time covering and doing this for Sportsnet. What's your takeaways, winners, losers, all those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting day for sure. Interesting stretch of time. Brandon Carlos, Schenn, is someone that we talked about a little bit about from the Boston Bruins. He ends up going to the Toronto Maple Leafs to help shore up their defense. But he costs a first-round conditional first plus Fraser Minton, who is one of their top prospects. And Carlo also had some trade protection. Not sure if that was an issue for the Jets or not, but I like that addition for the Leafs. And again, Scott Laughton fits more for the Toronto Maple Leafs than he did for the Winnipeg Jets. And again, that's not an excuse, but the Leafs don't have Adam Lowry. Scott Laughton is going to try to play a role similar to Adam Lowry rather than playing a second-line skilled center role for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I applaud Jim Nill for his ability to get the biggest fish on the market and getting that player signed to an 8-year deal that's worth $12 million per season. The end of that deal is going to be probably fairly costly, but it's a deal that needed to be made for the Dallas Stars, who are very much in the middle of a competitive window. They also got Wyatt Johnson signed. And again, Cody Ceci, is he the best solution on right D? No, but he's an upgrade to what the Dallas Stars needed on their right side. And Mikael Granlund, Schenn, is someone that we talked about as maybe the Jets being in on. I'm not sure how serious their interest was, but they added a centerman that helps their team as well. I love the Florida Panthers edition of Brad Marchand. I think that's just an absolutely brilliant move by them. They're such a hard team to play against already, and I think Brad Marchand is someone who is so hungry to win. He could go back to Boston if he likes the direction they're going, even though they're probably going to be. It's not going to be scorched earth there, but there's definitely looking like they're going to be trying to retool. And again, I love the aggressiveness of Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic of the Colorado Avalanche. Now, you're banking on a lot of people fitting in well, but I would say they got the best center available. I like the addition of Charlie Coyle. He definitely stretches their depth and makes more sense on a third line role than Casey Middlestad does. Ryan Lindgren has had a tough year on defense for the Rangers. His body kind of giving out a little bit, but he gives them a ruggedness that they could use in addition to Josh Manson. So, I like what Colorado did. They've already on the fly, they redid their goalie situation during the year. And here's the thing, Schenn, reinforcing your point, for the Jets needing or wanting to ensure that they finish first. Yes, as Adam Lowry pointed out, you got to beat 4 teams to make it all the way to the top. If the Jets finish first, it means that Colorado and Dallas are probably beating each other's brains out like the Dallas Stars and Vegas Golden Knights did in the first round last year. So one of those teams, both of whom were very aggressive and took massive swings, is going to be out in the first round. So outside of that, around the league, I thought it was interesting. I love what Ottawa did, as we talked about. I really love the addition of Cousins for them. They get a little bit more stiffness on the back with Dennis Gilbert. Whether he's a regular player or not, who knows, but good depth there.
Fabian Zetterlund, they needed a little bit of depth there. I thought.
Well, they got Zetterlund?
Yeah.
Ottawa?
I thought they did great.
I love Zetterlund. It's a great addition.
And when I say this, I don't see, this is interesting because a lot of the things that Ken is saying, like you're kind of grading on a curve. Like the Winnipeg Jets are phenomenal, and what the Winnipeg Jets are looking to do, like I said, is become impenetrable. If you're the Ottawa Senators, you're looking to shore up your chances of making the playoffs. I don't look at this and think the Ottawa Senators are going to make the playoffs, and I don't necessarily look at this and think that there wouldn't be some growing pains bringing a guy like Cousins in, and that those growing pains where they are may even cost them the playoffs. I think they got a phenomenal player with a ridiculous upside that makes this team better in the long run. They added a little bit of depth, so they took care of some of their needs. I actually like what the Toronto Maple Leafs did. They got harder to play against with a great defenseman and Scott Laughton. While I don't think Scott Laughton was a fit here, I think he was a fit there. I think they've got all the kind of skill that they need there. Now the problem with the Toronto Maple Leafs, they need to get better. I think a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning, I really like what they did. They basically just got the band back together, and it's funny because you think, but that's yesteryear, except those guys are all still pretty young, right? Like Braden Point is young, Anthony Cirelli is young, Brandon Hagel is young. They've replaced Steve Stamkos, who was the old guy there, with Jake Gensel, who's essentially, I don't think he's as good as Steve Stamkos was at the same age, but he's young and he can score. Their defense core is good. They got back, remind me of his name. They got him from the Rangers originally. Then they sent him. He was in the big American defenseman that their coach just absolutely loves. They got him back from the Nashville Predators this past year. We're not getting it, eh? Okay, sorry. A lot of you are going to know who I'm talking about on defense out there. They love him as a player. They talked about him being a quiet Norris Trophy candidate if the trophy was seriously about that. Regardless, I feel like they've got the band back together with a younger version of Steve Stamkos. So,
Ryan McDonough.
Yeah, Ryan McDonough. There you go. I think Florida just kind of doubled down on what Florida was last year. I think they know what the you know what the formula is. So I think they were going to be tough regardless. I think Dallas, that's a brilliant play. You take a look at Dallas. I've always kind of thought of them as being the old team, and then you actually look at the core of that team outside of Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin and maybe Duchesne, and realize that all those guys are like quite a bit younger than the Mark Scheifele's of the world. And not only do they go out and get one of the top 10 players in the league and sign him without having to give up much that affects them right now, but they go out and they extend Wyatt Johnston at the same time. Like, this is Jim Nill is operating on a different level. And I don't know, Ken, that I've ever seen someone as aggressively and I think effectively rebuild their team the way that the Colorado Avalanche did. If you're looking for another winner of the Flame and Comfort Hot Take Award, it should go to me, who, if you remember, said when the Casey Middlestad deal was made by the Colorado Avalanche that it was a terrible deal. If you take a look at what they did, I still like that they moved him for Charlie Coyle because they needed to get him out. They've opened up that money. They'll be a better team next year because of it. They're harder to play against. Brock Nelson on the second makes them a really tough team to handle. Who knows if Gabriel Landeskog could even come back? They get Eric Johnson back, who's basically their version of Schenn, and shores up their defense. And they've got a goaltender that they think they believe in. The team that, if the Winnipeg Jets run into that team in the playoffs this year, is going to be different than the team that they've been handling so far this year. Entirely different. Great job of coming back from a place that I thought they were taking that team and just taking it out of contention. And for me, they're right back. And I got to say this, the Edmonton Oilers, I think, did a good job of nibbling at all the things that they need to do to take a step further from where they were last year. Their problems there seem to be just the motivation of their high-end players to stay high all the time. I still think that they're extremely dangerous. Thought it was interesting.
Leon's Hart Trophy candidate.
Yeah, right. I know, but you've got the best player in the world openly talking about like trying to find his motivation, and they're losing 4 games in a row because they're just basically not showing up in their games. I mean, it's, yes, Leon's doing great, but there's problems with that team and motivation. But the good news for them is all they have to do is find a way to turn that on in that dressing room, and they've had lots of practice turning it on and turning it off the last couple of years. Regardless, I think here's the deal. If you're a Winnipeg Jets fan, here's, I think, what you don't like about this day is your path to the cup just got harder through the Central Division. It got harder through a number of teams. I think Vegas quietly likes what they've done there. So, you could face maybe a Vegas team that's not as high, or they could figure it all out. Same thing with Edmonton. And that's what's waiting for you if you can get out of your division. And what the Winnipeg Jets need to do is win their division so that they hopefully play a team like the Calgary Flames or the St. Louis Blues or something like that, instead of having to go through both the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche. And then waiting for you on the other side is going to be a team like the Panthers or the Tampa Bay Lightning, or maybe, just maybe, a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are all super skilled teams who've added some grind. Whoever wins the Stanley Cup this year, Ken, I think is going to have won against one of the most capable fields of potential. Like, put it this way: Winnipeg Jets, Colorado Avalanche, Dallas Stars, Washington Capitals, Florida Panthers, Tampa Bay Lightning, Toronto Maple Leafs, Edmonton Oilers, Vegas Golden Knights. Would anyone out there be blown away and shocked if any one of those 9 teams won the cup this year? 33% of the league, in my opinion, is in play to win the Stanley Cup this year. So if your Winnipeg Jets do it and they win the President's Trophy, I will say this: it would have to be considered one of the most dominant years a NHL team has ever had to come out on top under those circumstances and do it from the beginning, from pole to pole, the way the Winnipeg Jets would do it if they ended up pulling it off. Ken, we got to get to our awards.
Yes,
Jonathan
sir.
Group got you covered. Play of the game. What do you got?
Yeah, I know we're going to disagree on this, but it's only a penalty if the penalty is called, and I agree that the penalty should have been called. But having said all of that, Dylan DeMelo's ability to prevent Jesper Bratt from scoring a goal is my choice for Got You Covered, because he literally had Connor Hellebuck covered when he needed him. And as I said, he should have been sent to the penalty box. And I think Dylan himself knows he should have been sent to the penalty box, but he wasn't. And in that case, it helped lead to a Jets goal at the other end. So I'm going with that play by Dylan DeMelo as my choice.
You get no argument from me because it's battle, right? Like
Sure.
it's I will do whatever it takes. And did I think it was a missed call? I entirely think it was a missed call. All that said, he battles, and if you don't, like you said, if you get away with it, if you don't get called, that's just how it goes. I'm not going to fault him. Did he take, in my mind, a penalty to stop a goal? Yeah. If the penalty
he should have anyway.
Called, if the penalty was called, and I don't know. I don't know that rule, Ken. I think in a situation
don't
like
bring
that,
it up if you don't know the answer.
Well, I already did before you got on the show.
Sorry.
Along with a whole bunch of other terrible things that I said about you. But regardless, it's battle. And so I love that it is you do not have people covered unless you're willing to fight to get people covered. So for me, I agree 100% with you, Ken. That's the Kenny and Renny OGs, the Johnston Group Got You Covered play of the game. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? You need to look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan. If you do, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. Ken, your hashtag the keg save of the game.
Yeah, this one I know you don't agree, but I do think that Hellebuck laying down on the ground, he did the only thing that he could in that situation. Yeah. You can argue that Eric Hollis shot it into him. That's fine. But he took away what should have been an empty net goal. So I'm going with that one.
He literally was looking in the opposite direction when that shot was
fine. It hit him and he stopped it.
I can't really think. Oh, there was. I had it. I lost it. There was. He had 2 great saves on Brendan Dillon. Brendan Dillon had 2 opportunities. Yes. So those were saves
one after the turnover.
He actively not only watched that a shot was coming, but reacted to the shot that was coming, which I think automatically makes it better than lying and looking in the wrong direction when you're being shot and the player somehow is not able to raise the puck over you. So the one of those 2 is my hashtag the keg. Got you covered, or sorry, hashtag the keg save of the game. You can agree with either of us, or you can go your own direction. We'd love to hear from you. Share with us your hashtag the keg. And I would really implore, I know there's a lot of the same people who are going for this, so please, if you're listening to this afterwards, if you're in the chat room and you haven't been sharing with us your keg save of the game or your TCB lamplighter, we want to hear more from you folks. So share with us. We love audience interaction. Let us know what your hashtag the keg save of the game is, because if you do, not only do we get to interact with you, but we also get to potentially gift you with a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And that brings us to our winner, Snackatoba. Snackatoba, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I will have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And that brings us to our TCB lamplighter. Ken, what do you got?
Yeah, it's got to be the backbreaker from Nikolai Ehlers. It's an offensive zone win after the Jets had killed off a penalty. Nikolai Ehlers gets a bump-up shift. Mark Scheifele wins the draw. Gabriel Velarde gets it back to the point. Eventually, it gets over to Nikolai Ehlers, I think, after Dylan DeMelo and Josh Morrissey both touch it. And Ehlers absolutely provides a backbreaker past Jacob Markstrom. And Sean, absolutely, we talk about the tipping ability. The underrated part for Velarde is his ability to screen the netminder. This is one that Jacob Markstrom did not see. It's a wicked shot by Ehlers, made even more wicked by the fact that Velarde won the winger battle, got the puck back, then went to the net, planted himself in front of Jacob Markstrom so that he couldn't see it.
What I love about that goal is it's essentially a set play. Like you can see, as soon as they win that, Nikolai Ehlers just goes flying into the other side. Now, the thing about that is that's meant to kind of get him lost and get him wide open. He's wide open enough to get the puck, but he actually has a guy who's there to cover him. The defense is in there. That guy takes off into the corner, though, in like, I don't know what he's doing there. Nick Ehlers is that open because of a bit of a boneheaded mistake by the defense. And honestly, on this night, there's a lot of mistakes that were made. And so the Jets are getting goals scored. You know, there's something to be said about forcing mistakes. There's also something to be said about a team kind of self-imploding. I thought the Devils self-imploded on this night, but usually when you find a team self-imploding, you'll find a strong team on the other side of it helping them towards that. Regardless, I'm going to go with the power play goal because I thought, Ken, for a power play that is so good at kind of passing it into wide open shots into the back of the net, which they do, this to me was just a really good example of a good old-fashioned strong power play goal, in that they kept finding that Nikolai Ehlers was open, so they kept moving it around and getting the puck back to him. And I'd said this earlier in the show, Ken, he gets the puck in that spot and he tries to shoot short side, right? Gets the puck back again. So what's Jacob Markstrom thinking? He's thinking, oh, this guy feels like he missed on the short side. He's going to go top corner on the short side. All of a sudden, he just fires it. He's not trying to score here. He's trying to pass the puck off his pad, and he knows that if he's not expecting it to go to the far side, that it's one of those situations where the goalie just kicks it out, and that's exactly what he does, kicks it straight to Josh Morrissey. If you notice, Josh Morrissey is already moving to that spot. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a perfectly executed pass by a power play that has been good enough to pass it to wide open nets in the back of the net in the past, and instead is using good old-fashioned get the puck to the net plays like this to put it in the back of the net, which is why that power play continues to be hot. That, for me, is my TCB Lamplighter of the game. Doesn't matter what I think, though. Matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag Lamplighter of the game. You're automatically entered to win a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to gift you your own, you know what to do. Head on down to 1290 Kenneson. Join them in their tap room. Get any kind of beer that you want that they have. There's so many varieties. They are all delicious. Their food is delicious as well. You are missing out if you haven't been down there. That's it for me, Ken. You are off to their next game down in Carolina. That's going to be fun. That's going to be fun.
Be interesting.
Yeah. I'm headed home for a little bit of a break here. Ovi didn't score tonight, which means I'm 4 goals away from heading on the road. So I'm going to have some time to cover the Jets here in Winnipeg. More time
Good
to
have
do
you
these
here,
shows.
buddy.
We will, of course, not be stopping with these shows when I'm on the road. We will continue K&R. Nothing stops the K&R train. Absolutely nothing, folks. And what we've learned is nothing stops all of you. You're always here, always sharing with us, always adding to the conversation, directing the conversation, driving the conversation. We so appreciate that. We do hope you appreciate before I move, Ken's got something to say.
No, you're good. Just awesome, folks. Over 500 both of the last 2 nights here, and great to see. We know there's a ton of interest, and it was a busy week, but appreciate you joining us.
I think people like wins, Ken. I don't know what tells me that, but there's something about our audience and as it compares to lost nights.
Interesting.
They like wins. I don't know.
I never thought of that.
We'll have to dig a little deeper into it. Regardless, thank you so much, folks. And if you appreciate the conversation happening in this space, we implore you to appreciate the contributions by our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan, Flame and Comfort, the Kenny and Renny OGs in the Johnson Group, the Keg, and of course, TransCanada Brewing Company. Thank you to all of them. Thank you to all of you. We will see you next time after their next game as they look for 3 straight wins. Oh, Ken's got something to say before we go. Oh, I never announced the Lamplighter winner. Yeah, I moved on from that. That would be Michael Horbe. Michael Horbe. You know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. I know it's Michael Horbe. We've met at an event before. And send me your email, Michael, and I will send you a voucher for a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. It is the nectar of the gods. Thank you for reminding me, folks. Good way to shut down the show to make sure we announce our winners. That's how you do it. We'll see you next time, folks. Bye-bye.